Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I wanted to go ahead and welcome everyone to the SpinifexIT virtual user group meeting this afternoon. This is Becky Pfeiffer, and I'm the manager of the North American Consulting Services for SpinifexIT, if you didn't recognize my voice already. Today, we're incredibly pleased to host a new and improved virtual user group meeting for you all. We wanted to spend some time with you today, given all that's going on in the world. We've heard from so many of you that having our products has been so very helpful, if not imperative, to you in doing your jobs in these changing times. With that realization, we wanted to thank you all for being our beloved customers, for continuing to serve your organizations through the use of our products. It's our hope that you come away from this meeting today with a bit more advanced knowledge that will help you to further the ability to produce your reporting needs in an easier and more efficient manner. With that, our agenda today is somewhat short. We wanted to give you beneficial content, yet keep the time spent to a minimum for you. We'll share an advanced topic based on your feedback, of course. We'll share what the latest developments are for our Strato product, and we'll spend some time addressing the questions that you all submitted to us through the registration process. Given time, we will also address questions received during the webinar from you. We appreciate all of you, of course, for being here, and we have a lot to cover. Our speakers today are some things that I'm going to cover to start with. We're going to go over a few housekeeping, and then how you can influence the future meetings. Speakers today are myself. I'm going to be your MC today. Paige Elkins, a solution engineer, is going to be joining us with a special topic, as well as Leanna Stetler and Stephen Gallo. Just a couple quick housekeeping items. Our session today is recorded, so we will be able to share that with you post-meeting, so in case you have to step away from your desk for a few minutes, or if you want to share this with others within your organization. I also want to encourage topics for future meetings, so that we know that we're giving you the topics that are going to be the most meaningful to you. If you have any questions during the webinar at all, please use the question and answer panel to ask those questions, and I will insert those questions at the end when we get to the Ask the Experts section. If you have any additional questions post-webinar, please go ahead and send those to info@spinifexit.com or email any of us directly. And also, I wanted to let you know that based on the questions that were gathered during the registration process, along with the questions that we're gathering from the webinar today, we're going to compile all of those into one question and answer document, and we will also share that with you after the session. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the controls over to our first speaker, which is going to be Paige Elkins. And she's going to take you through a topic that is probably the most asked topic from our help desk, as well as back to our ourselves as engineers and architects as well, and that's really surrounding merging data. So with that, Paige, will you take it over?
All right, thank you, Becky, and thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully you are viewing my screen okay. I've got a slide up that says Advanced How-To Merging Data. And that's what I'm going to be taking you through here, just a real quick look at hopefully some tips that are going to help you out. So I do hope you remember your basic Easy Reporter training, where you learned that the merge functionality is accessed here on tab 2, down at the bottom under the Advanced Settings menu. Once you double click Merge Settings in that area, the screen is going to refresh to show you these 3 tabs. Notice there is a box to activate or deactivate the merge settings that you create, which is circled up here at the top of the screenshot. Now at the bottom, you're viewing the first tab called Unique Fields. This is where you select which field or fields should drive the merging of your rows. So for example, if you want any rows where it's the same employee number to be merged together, then you would select employee number. Now I use that example because it is the most common selection made. But note though, you can select more than one field, because sometimes you want your merge to be based on the commonality of several fields from the report. So here's what that first tab does. Before I show you tab 2, we're going to look at some real life examples as the settings on that second tab make more sense to you once you've seen some illustrations. So here's an example. Notice this employee, if you look at the bottom here, has hours worked, an hourly rate, and the associated dollar amount coming out split into 2 rows on the report. So obviously you're looking at this and you know that you would like to collapse those 2 rows into one. Now this is what I would just call a simple merge, because all you have to do is make sure the checkbox to activate is set and that you have your unique field of employee number, like I just discussed, and then the merge is going to occur. The system's able to understand how to merge the rows without any other direction from you, the user. You can see here at the bottom of this slide what the merge data would look like. Sometimes, though, the system does need a little bit more direction from you. For example, here, if you look at the bottom, you can see there are 3 rows created for the employee, and we have this complicating factor in that she had 2 different hourly rates over the particular date range. So if we ask Easy Reporter to merge based on the unique field of employee number, what's it supposed to do about that rate column? I doubt you want the numbers combined to equal a total of $80 plus per hour. So how do we proceed? Well, a couple potential methods that are available are the what's called overwrite with last or the overwrite with first options. So if you wanted the merge to put the first rate, the $38.67, as the final result, you would use the overwrite with first option. Conversely, you can use overwrite with last to include the $41.33. So this overwrite with first, overwrite with last, what am I talking about? Let's move to the next slide. This is where you make those kind of selections. This is now that second tab that I talked about under the merge selections, the merge functionality, where you either leave the middle column as it's defaulted in there with just the simple word of merge, or on a column per column basis, you set the option you want to use from a drop down, as you can see here. And like here, you can tell we are selecting overwrite with last. So we're doing that for the rate column. Look at the bottom of the screen and you can see what that does to the output. It shows you the system is going to merge the rows now because you've provided additional instruction and told it for that rate column, overwrite with the last one, which was the $41.33. All right, so now that you've seen a couple examples via the slides, I'm going to take you into the system for the rest of my illustrations so you can really get some exposure to some different merge options. So I'm going to navigate over here to my payroll system. All right, so what I have for you first is I've already run this simple little report and I do not have any merging activated for it. So you can see it's pulling employee number, name. Each person has 2 rows because it has their taxes withheld, which is just a wage type, a registration number, and an account number. That's some other values coming from the payroll clusters. It's all on the top row. But we also asked for a year-to-date value from the CRT, if you're familiar with your payroll results, and it's putting the year-to-date value on a second row. So you look at this and you're like, well, I certainly see no issue why I couldn't just merge those into one row. That's really the presentation I would want. So it didn't happen automatically. How are we going to make it happen? What I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to tab 2. So I already have this in edit mode, and you can see I'm on the merge settings. And if I scroll down here just a little bit, you can see what I've selected under my merge options is for that year-to-date column. There's a drop option in the drop down called total and show against first record. I have selected that option. Now this time when I ran it, I didn't activate the merge, but now I'm going to. So now that that merge is activated and we run again, we're going to get the results we're looking for. And there you have it. Now I have 1 row per employee. That particular merge option is the one that allowed me to do it for this example. I'm going to move us to another one so I can show you a different type of merge option. I've already run this report and I did not do any merging yet. And so you can see again, I have 2 rows per employee. this report, what I was looking for was the /701 wage type, which for the US is our taxable wages for the authority of Fed. And so for this column where the /701 is, I'm asking for that dollar amount. I have a column filter on it to only populate when the tax authority is Fed. And then I have the last column is the actual tax authority code. So obviously that row has the Fed, but these people also have wage types /701 under state authorities like MA for Massachusetts, CA for California. Even though I put a column filter and said I don't really want to populate the dollars, I still get that additional row because they do have that tax authority. So you're looking at this and you're like, well, I want it one row per employee. You're going to have to tell me a little bit more information because I don't know how you want me to merge these two rows together. The Fed and the Massachusetts, that split out of those tax authorities, I need to know how am I to handle that when I do this merge. So here we have another option. We're going to go over to the Merge tab again. For this particular one, I am using an option called Join. And you'll also notice in the extra column, there's a /. You're going to see what happens with those entries once I activate this merge. So the option is join. It has an actual little extra parameter you can add, and then we're going to go test it. So we'll go rerun this report again. All right, now you can see the results. I now have one row per employee. I have my Fed /701 amount still populating just like it was. My tax authority column now, it's almost like a concatenation. It joined them together so they could be in one row with that particular separator that I chose, that /. That, by the way, is optional. You don't have to have anything separating them. So this is one way, and I've used this a lot of times when a tax authority happened to be the thing that I was dealing with to get it into one row. So another possibility that you've seen. So you've now seen overwrite with last in our slides. You have seen total and show against the first row, and you have seen the join option. For my last example, I'm going to take us in a little bit of a different direction. We're going to talk about the impact that hiding columns can have when it comes to merging your rows. So I have a report here that you're looking at on the screen that I just ran. This one is a timesheet type of report, and it's showing what type of time and then the number of hours associated on a per day basis. So you can see I have several rows for each of these employees, like 30 rows each, I guess. And because it's showing, one per day, one entry per day. So if you told me, well, you know what, I want this merged into one row per employee, I'd first need to understand what exactly do you mean? Well, I'm thinking you probably mean you would like all those hours summarized since they are the same type of time being recorded, summarized and show me a total. Well, how could you do that with this particular report? One way would be, okay, well, let's hide this actual date column because that's what's forcing it to split out into all those multiple rows. Because it's a different date on every row, it creates, all these individual rows. So let's get rid of that column. So we're going to go over to tab 2, and I'm just going to follow that thought process of, well, maybe you're thinking, let's hide the column. So if I go into that particular column, and let's open it up to the column settings, and we're going to hide it. Remember from your training, you can hide or display columns. Unfortunately, though, it's not that simple. There's two options for hiding. Hide and clear versus hide and leave. Let me show you what happens if we pick the hide and leave option. So I've made it hide and leave. I'm going to go run my report. Let's kick it off again. So what's going to happen when this finishes is that ZES actual date timestamp is not going to be on the report any longer. Then you can see that. If I expand my column just a little bit, you can see that we still have multiple rows per employee, each of those individual 8 hours, even though that column with the date stamp on it is not on the report any longer. Well, why is that? That's because we chose the option hide and leave. So if you've ever heard me in training say, if you use the hide and leave, it might mess up your merge. This is what I'm talking about because it's keeping the data from merging just the same as if it were displayed. hide and leave, the data is still there. And if it's going to stop you from merging when it's in display mode, it's going to stop you from merging now. How can we get around that? Well, we can switch it to hide and clear. You do need to be very cognizant when you go to a hide and clear option because it could impact other things in the report. If you have calculations or mappings or subsequent functions that are happening after this and they're relying on the data being there, well, then a hide and clear is going to get rid of that data. So you have to be really careful of the timings that you set on every one of your steps. But this simple report, we don't have anything like that going on. Hide and clear should help us. If we go run it now, not only have we hidden the column, we've cleared out the data, so it will no longer be there to stop the data from merging. So what I'm expecting is when this finishes, I will have one row, and I do. It finished, one row per employee with the total hours. So your takeaway there, hide and clear versus hide and leave. Sometimes hide and leave is going to give you a merging issue if that data that's in that column is stopping the rows from being able to be merged. It's just like if it were displayed. Switch it to hide and clear. You should solve your merge issue, but do be aware of all those other things that come into play when the data has been cleared out. And we can talk more about that in a subsequent session if we need to. So that kind of takes me to the end of my time. I'm going to switch you over now to Stephen from our team, who's going to talk about Strato. So Stephen, I will be handing the presentation over to you.
Got it. Can you see my screen now, Ms. Page?
Yes, I certainly can.
Perfect. Okay, everyone. Most of you know me. My name is Stephen Gallo. I'm the product architect for North America for SpinifexIT. I reside in Columbia, South Carolina, and I have not left this state since November, right? So to be honest with you, the reason I haven't left is because we've been doing a lot of Strato implementations, and most of them have been remote work. Strato's kind of taken off in the last few months, probably because of a variety of the features that we're adding to it. Some are in beta testing at some of our prospective clients. Some of them are done. But most of us deal in the HR payroll space. Those of you who are on the call, this is kind of more focused primarily on the HR side of the fence. So if there's people after you guys see this that want to talk about it, obviously give us a ring. Some of you though on this call though, I know have our Easy Documents application. You've had it forever. Strato is kind of the evolution of that product. And it's going to be way more than what Easy Documents ever was out there. So to start with, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Strato is our now cloud-based document generation solution. It connects with SuccessFactors, and it connects with your SAP system, whether it's your ECC on-premise system or whether it's you're going to the cloud, like Employee Central Payroll. And it's not just going to be a documents platform. We're kind of like rebranding this as our full-on suite, and it's not there yet. It's going to take years to get there, but there's certain things that are coming along really nicely. For one thing, the document generation solution is pretty solid today, and I will talk to you about some of the use cases some of our customers have been using it with. But we're also kind of working on an online reporting platform, right? We're trying to do the same thing we've done with Easy Reporter, merging in, your ECC data, but include all the SuccessFactors data. And we've been talking about this for a while. It's been a very daunting challenge. We're probably looking for a release in there, of at least version 1 of that sometime in 2021. It's not even demoable yet, but it is coming along pretty nicely. What we're also going to do as part of the documents platform is we're building a storage engine as well, right? So everyone always asks, especially when you're Easy Documents, where can I store my documents? We're like, wherever you want, but we don't provide a mechanism. Well, now we're going to do that. We're getting into the storage game. There's a lot that goes behind storage when it comes to data security and things of that nature. So we're trying to get all of our ducks in a row with that, but that you'll start to see some more about in 2021. What you will see this year, and some I'll talk about today, is we are launching our own e-signature service, right? So everyone's always like, oh, I have to get an Adobe sign license. I need DocuSign license. We're going to build a signature service right into Strato. So as you route different documents around and they need signatures, you can just handle it with one specific platform. And that's really what I wanted to talk to you about today is Strato now has full-on workflow. It's going live with a customer very soon. Here, it's very, very powerful. It's really cool, but it's kind of been like the game changer in my opinion lately. Of people have been like, oh, I can really do this. I can do it in an automated way and not have to worry about my documents anymore. And the answer to that is yes. And we'll kind of just take a 5-minute overview of what we're working on with that. But Strato is pretty busy, right? So right now we're in 5 different countries with a few of our customers: the United States, Australia, Germany, Philippines. I can't remember the 5th one off the top of my head. I think the 6th one's coming online soon. And there's a lot of employees running through it. We say roughly with Easy Reporter, because Easy Reporter's been around like 15 plus years. There's like 9 million employees running through that thing across the globe. We're almost to 500,000 with Strato, and people are generating a lot of documents. Honestly, a little more than I actually thought they were going to generate. To be quite honest with you, but we've realized that there's a lot of industries that have a lot of like contingent labor. A lot of the offers and contracts, they're generating more than we actually thought, which is fine. The platform can handle it out there, but it's kind of cool when you look at, well, there's only 380,000 people, but they're doing 7,000 a month. It seems like a lot, considering we'd like to think most people only have about 50 documents generated for their whole employee life cycle. So it's getting some use. People are liking it out there. And it's not just, we always used to kind of just push it on the offer letter process. And I'd say that that's probably the strongest use case, I think, for Strato, for those HR folks where you have a specific letter of offer and you want that letter to be smart, right? This letter, when I generate it, I want it to have my reload. This letter, I want it to have this logo for this division of my company, right? We build those smart letters, and that most customers who are very large in size, I say that, even some of our smaller ones have very complicated processes where they have like 50 different offer templates. That's always been a real driver use case. But lately, it's been the life cycle side of the fence. And I think people are finally, and this is why I think people have finally started to make their way to the cloud, into Employee Central, into those talent modules. They've got the core stuff working and humming along the way they want, and now they're trying to make those improvements, right? And the document generation of success factors is, let's just say it's not that stellar. And that's one of the things where, you know what, if we go live without it, it's not going to be catastrophic. But now we got to make some improvements, and using Strato for all these different use cases that you're seeing on the screen here kind of lends itself to business process improvement out there. And that's why I think the uptick in the number of users and documents that are being generated are taking hold, because it's across the board, right? It's everything from hiring to your welcome packet to your offer letter. And then since we can connect to your ECC system, it's all your pay statement or your benefit statements, things of that nature. And then, of course, exit statements when you go to retire and or get terminated out there. And what we've always talked about is this. So this is where the new workflow engine comes in. I always talk about things in levels of maturity, or at least I try to, because maybe that makes me sound, mature or something like that, right? When we think about like level 1 of document generation, that's you out there with a Word template out in SharePoint, and somebody sends a ticket in and you go fill out this Word template and mail it away, right? But then there's level 2, and we've always had level 2. We've had it with Easy Docs for quite a while, and even Easy Docs has some level of automation in it, that's where you're producing the correct document in an automated way. So you can have the smarts in that document. Someone doesn't have to say, all right, we got to include this paragraph, this paragraph, this paragraph. You just push the button and it generates it nicely for you to take out that human error and save you time. And honestly, this project we're working on, I have offer letters that are literally 28 pages long. I'm not kidding. And there's a lot of them out there. So you can imagine some of the time savings that these recruiters are actually going to see, because they're literally not editing 28 pages of offer letters anymore. It's rather daunting. That said, what we're now working with Strato is we've hit maturity level 3. What we've done is we've linked Strato in with intelligence services. I'll explain what that is in a second, with success factors. And now it has an automated trigger to kick off a workflow. And that workflow can go anywhere to anyone in the organization, as long as they're inside the system out there. Because you're probably thinking to yourself, well, some of you already know, but what is an intelligence service? An intelligence service is a trigger, if you would, in success factors, that when something occurs and something very specific occurs, you can actually have a third-party system such as Strato get called. Now, there is not a intelligence service for everything, right? You might think here like, hey, you know what? When we change the last name of Bill, we want a notification that their last name changed. It doesn't do that. You would handle that through standard workflow probably. But there are specific events, change in jobs, change in positions, putting someone in the offer status, that are automated events that get fired off that Strato can read. So essentially Strato can sit there and say, ooh, thank you, intelligence service, for telling me that Steve Gallo's offer letter just kicked off. Let me go route this to his hiring manager for approval. Oh, that looks good. Hiring manager says, okay, she signs it, goes to candidate, and then candidate fills out the exception. That's the whole idea behind it. And that's what this is kind of explaining here, right? The whole thing is that we can now automate the document process for for certain business aspects, right? So some of your business processes are still going to be in level 2, where it's an ad hoc type of thing. What's a good example of a level 2? The manager, it's pay change time of the year, right? Every business process, every company does this, right? The manager says, all right, it's merit time of the year. All the merit's been keyed. Let me go generate a document that says, Steve Gallo got a 3% raise this year. He was making $35,000 a year. Now he's making $38,000. I don't know if that's 3%. And then you call him into the office and you say, dear Steven, thank you very much for your service. Here's your, letter of raise. You talk to him for 10 minutes and you get kicked out and you go back to work, right? And I always say that's such an amazing time-saving process if you were to automate that, because you think about it, that's definitely something that every company does at least once a year probably, and every manager pretty much does it, right? Some of you had different comp processes that are centralized, but the majority of the organizations that I'm at, it's the manager calling you in the office to give you the pat on the back, right? So that's a good example of a level 2 process. We're trying to move everything to level 3, where things get changed in SuccessFactors. The details are sent to whoever they need to go to, and then that letter is actually delivered to the final recipient, whether it be a manager, whether it be, an employee. We have different levels of workflow. And I'll show you just some screenshots of the workflow engine that we built here in a minute. And the same process for an offer letter, right? So if we're talking about before that, we have different levels of where we're sending things. They can go to the recruiter, they can go to the hiring manager, they can go to vice presidents of stuff as long as they're listed somewhere in the recruiting module. And then eventually, finally, it'll make its way to the candidate. They can approve and sign it. And it's all automated. You didn't have to do anything. You literally just had to flip the flag in SuccessFactors and say, move this guy into the created status for offer, and intelligence services will fire off and handle everything else for you, right? The recruiter doesn't have to sit there and edit a template, doesn't have to email it all over the place. What we're finding is that when we were doing the analysis of a certain company's offer process, it was literally taking like 3 days to get from A to B. So from the time that somebody said, all right, start creating this, to the time it got approved to the candidate, it was a lot of time, because there's all those different approval steps. Things get lost in inboxes, things get lost in, other things out there. Well, we're now saying just click go, and the document will just follow its path. Obviously, if there's any rework that has to occur through the approval process in there, that can hold it up as well. But that's the whole purpose of a workflow, right? You can see the final version of the document, make sure that it's correct going to the candidate the first time out the door, right? And we built a little workflow engine. There's nothing fancy here. But literally, it's very simple. You build these blocks out there that say, what do you want to do? Well, there's a trigger for a status change in recruiting, let's say, looking at this here. And then we have some business rules that say, which template should we generate? And you could base that on the fields aren't populated in the screenshot, but based on any field in SuccessFactors. So based on this country, this position, this sort of whatever, this is the template that we want to create. It will generate it, and it'll eventually go through the approval process, going to whatever leader, get rejected, follow the loop until it eventually gets signed by the applicant and stored back in SuccessFactors. So it's a pretty neat thing we've done with documents. I just wanted to put you guys aware of it. We're not doing a solution demo today. I forgot to take the slide out. Everyone's always on reporting, but SpinifexIT does have a lot of other cool stuff out there, and I'm not trying to sell you on anything. But if you have those business processes that are annoying, especially when it comes to documents, because documents are really overhead, right? The only reason you're producing a document is because there's a rule in your organization that says you have to, or there's a government regulation that says you have to. No one would do it if we didn't have to do it. So you can find nice automated ways to do it. We are happy to help. Becky, I believe I'm turning it back over to you, or Paige.
Back over to me, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Already taken it, so we should be good. You're welcome. Thanks a lot, Stephen. Okay, we're going to move on to the next segment, which it's time for Ask the Experts. We're going to begin with the questions that were already submitted to us during the registration process. Thank you to all of you that submitted those. If we have time at the end and you have submitted some questions on the panel, which I'm not seeing any as of yet, but I will check one more time, we'll cover those as well. And like I said earlier, we're going to make sure we have all the questions that are gathered together, put into a document with the answers that go along with them, and we will distribute those as soon as it's ready for you. All right, let's move on to the next set of questions. This is where I get to play MC. I ask the question and I'm going to assign it to some other people. All right. Is it possible to distribute reports via an email distribution list? I'm going to have Leanna answer that one.
Okay. Absolutely. Yes, you can. It's it's possible to first create that list in your email application, say for instance Outlook, assign an email address to that list, and then use that email address as the recipient on your report. When you go into tab 5 of Easy Reporter, you simply select the internet email as your email type, and then just type that email address in the address field, and you're all set.
Good deal. All right, number 2. How do we use the currency conversion functionality? I'm going to let Paige take that one.
Okay, so let me start off by saying everything I'm going to tell you is documented in our online portal. So if you're thinking you need to you know, hurry and scramble and write down a bunch of little details that I tell you, you don't have to. It's out there. You can find it. But let me see if I can give you a little bit of a high level. For one, you know, of course, we're reliant on the configuration being in place in SAP. So standard SAP, there are some tables where you configure the currency conversions that you want you know, to be in place. So knowing that you have done that first, then on the Easy Reporter side, there's a couple places where you can go. You can either do this as a general setting. So this is in the, you know, the main general settings for Easy Reporter, or you can do it directly in a given report on tab 1 in the report settings if you want to make it, you know, particular for that one report. But either place, you're going to set a conversion rate type, which there's a drop down there, and you're going to be selecting the conversion rate type, which will correlate to one of your entries in the tables, the SAP tables that you've already configured. In particular, the table is TCURV, T-curve, TCURV. So however you've set it up in T-curve, you're going to select from that, either under general settings or for the individual report in report settings, the conversion rate type. So you do that. And then the only other thing to do is now you actually, when you build your report and you've got a field on the report that you want to convert, so it's like, you know, some dollar amount and you want to convert it, you're going to go to the column settings. You're going to move over inside of column settings, you're going to move over to the advanced settings tab. And in there, there's a currency conversion section, and you're just going to select what you want, you know, the currency you want it converted to, you know, that other country's, you know, currency code that you want to convert to. And with that in place, the system, when it runs, when Easy Reporter runs, is going to use your configuration, the combination of what you've just set and your configuration in the system from standard SAP, and we'll do that currency conversion for you. And like I said, that's a lot of information. It is also, you can find it in our online documentation too.
We're going to also provide some links to that information directly within the document that we compile for you too after the session. Thank you, Paige. The next one, what are the best options for sending a big, and by big we mean 200 plus columns, 70,000 plus employees on a scheduled report? Stephen.
Sure, and I think I know who sent in this question. That said, I'll give you guys a little anecdotal history about Easy Reporter that some of you may not know. If you look in the payroll results columns folder, for those of you who pull payroll data, there's 200 payroll results columns at this point in time in the system. When I first started, I think there were about 50, and then that was 7, 8 years ago. And then we had to add 60, and then we had to add 100, and we added 150, and then we added 200, and then a lovely large pharmaceutical customer came along and said, we need more. And we were like, we're not adding any more. So this was the idea of where we came up with that dynamic column generation, where you can punch in like 1,000 wage types and it'll just build you 1,000 column based report, whatever that is. So that's the history behind that. So those of you who have 200 plus columns, you're not alone. There are a few of you out there who build reports like that. I think the largest interface I ever built for a customer was like 198 columns, but it was a combination of HR and payroll. That said, what is the best way? Ugh. I mean, there's no stellarly best way. I will tell you the ways that people do it, and I can understand some of the problems that you're probably having with distribution. One is for very large things that are consistently large. If you can't change the email setting I'm going to tell you about, you have to get your organization to set up an SFTP folder that's tied to a folder on your SAP system. So just like your interface files and things of that nature that go to a certain location, and then your middleware picks it up and sends it to a vendor, you'd probably need a folder created out there that has FTP on it, so you can FTP into SAP and pull the data out that way. That said, the other option, and I will include the screenshot in Becky's notes, is you're probably trying to distribute it through email, and SAP's default email is usually like 5 or 10 megs. I checked our systems, it's 10 out there, and what you have to do is go in the transaction and change it, and usually your basis team is not fond of changing that. However, the argument that you should use is that we should be able to email something that is the same size as our standard email policy. So if your email policy for Outlook or Gmail or whatever you're doing is like a 20 meg file, SAP should be allowed to send a 20 meg file. Because the reason you have file sizes that big is because you have to send file sizes that big, right? If you have another distribution mechanism, great, but sometimes it's got to be done via email. The transaction that you want to go to in SAP is called SCOT, SCOT, so that's Sam, Charlie, Oscar, Tango, right? And you'll see in there some settings. There's literally a settings folder, and again, I'll send the screenshot. There's an outbound message settings, and in there you'll see the maximum size of a message that can be displayed. So that's what's going to have to get changed. You're probably not going to have access to do it. You will have to go to your basis team to get that done and approved. Becky?
All right, thank you, Stephen. The next question also relates to the number 200. I think we should have all played the lottery on that one. We have 200 plus automated scheduled reports with recipients rapidly changing. Is there a way to update them quickly? And I'm going to assign that one to Leanna.
Okay. This question kind of takes me back to the first question on email distribution lists. Because there really isn't an option to mass update multiple reports at the same time. So if you have multiple reports that are going to the same individuals, I would recommend using an email distribution such as like hr@SpinifexIT.com, so you can maintain in just one spot. Or if the distribution is based on a person's position, instead of keying in the individual's email address, you can point to the position in your org structure, and it will automatically get sent to the person sitting in that seat, which can address employee movement within the organization. But that's as long as you maintain the email addresses in info type 105 for your employees. Other options include pointing to a field on the report, or maintaining your distribution list in Excel and then uploading using the clipboard functionality directly into the report on tab 5. Your choices there are to either upload, which will replace the existing entries, or you can do the append, which will add any new entries to the end of the list. A final option is to point to a field on another report. So again, if you have multiple reports going to the same people, you could have all of those reports pointing to a single report and then just maintain that one. And information on how to achieve that is definitely located on our customer care portal.
Okay. And the last question that we have from our submitted questions ahead of time, can we connect to other Portlet data sources in EC other than biographical info per person? I'm going to give that one to Stephen.
Sure, that's another coincidental one because it's something we just figured out. There's some history to this. So in the 2020 release of Easy Reporter, we're going to have different ways to connect to other biographical information. It's not terribly complicated, but it's kind of like standalone. It's not linked entirely to Employee Central or the ECC data. What I know everyone wants to do is connect just like their ECC data, drag on an Employee Central field, life is good, and then drag on something from a custom Portlet and life is good, and they can tie all that together with payroll. And we did find a way recently when we built the employee time off functionality. It leveraged a certain piece of tech in the OData API. And one of our developers was genius enough, because one of my customers literally last week asked us to do this, came up with the table entries based on their custom Portlet to add it to Easy Reporter. And we actually made it work, right? We added the entries, took a little WebEx call, but it worked. And that was being linked through the user entity. They have two other entities we have to connect, and of course, two other portlets, if you would, and of course, they're linked via something else. So we're currently in the process, and I know this customer's on the phone right now, of figuring out how to link those other two entities out there. So the short answer to your question is yes. What I recommend you do is create a ticket email support@SpinifexIT, explain the portlet, what you're trying to do. We are going to ask you for a download of your OData API metadata out of the dictionary there in SuccessFactors. And if you tell us the entity, we should be able to provide you table entries and the table to update to make that work. Becky?
All right, thank you. Okay, that's all of the submitted questions. I do see one additional question in our question portal, and it says, and I'm going to, just so Paige, you have your ears on, I'm going to assign it to you. Okay. So as noted in the beginning of the presentation, are there other implications using the hide and leave versus the hide and clear besides impacting the merge?
Yeah, good question, because the answer absolutely is yes. Besides my convoluted explanation earlier where hide and leave versus hide and clear impacts the merge, and like I said, if you hide and leave, it's like it's still there. If it's stopping you from merging when it's displayed, it's going to stop you from merging when it's hidden if it's a hide and leave. So you think, okay, I'll go to hide and clear. Well, you're right. There are other impacts, because if you're doing other stuff with that data, if you are, calculating off of those fields, you have a mapping that's based on one of those hidden fields, other things that you're doing, in your report that are referring back to those fields that now you're wanting to hide. If you do a hide and clear, you may mess up that functionality depending on the timing you attach to all of that. You may or may not have tons of familiarity. We try to teach this during our training. It's one of those things that kind of comes along as you mature with the software, but we have this whole timing process, the sequence of events, what happens, and you can have like a calculation happen early on in the process of your report, then other things happen, and then there could be a calculation that happens later, and slotted in there is that hide and clear. And if you have a calculation or a substring or whatever it might be falling in the process after the hide and clear, can't do it to the hide, the data that was hidden and cleared, because it's no longer there. I don't know if that's the greatest explanation. It's hard to virtually explain it without me being able to like point at the wall and tell you things, but you're absolutely right. The whole timing processing sequence comes into play there, and if you do a hide and clear, the data is cleared out and it will not be there for you to do subsequent processes with it. I hope that helped.
Okay, I'll do one more check to see if there's any other questions. And it looks like we have wrapped up with the questions there as well. So I'm going to go ahead on to wrap up in the next steps. I just really, again, want to thank everyone for being here. We are planning to do another of these sessions. It is our intention right now to do them twice a year. So our target for the next session delivery will be in October of 2020. Our future topics are going to be determined by the most asked questions, their subject types, in our support portal and or those questions that are coming to us directly. So we want to make sure that we're getting topics that are really relevant to you all out there. Again, we will additionally ask if there's any other topics or questions. We will gather that information on our registration forms, and again, you can send those to us as well. We are wrapping it up now. I just want to thank you all for joining us today, because it really means a lot to us to have all of you out there being partners with us, working with us. As I said earlier, a recording of the webinar is going to be available. We will give that to you along with a compiled document of all the questions and answers, including links and screenshots so that you didn't have to remember and take a lot of notes while we were answering those. Feel free to share those with your other colleagues who weren't able to join you as well today. We want to make sure that the word is spread out and as much gets out to the customer base as possible so that you are all as informed as possible. Again, we want to thank you all from the bottoms of our hearts for your continued support and your presence today in this new virtual format. Of course, we wish you all the best, and above all, we wish you all to stay well. With that, we'll draw this to close. We wish you to have a wonderful afternoon, and we are here for you if you need us. Take care and be well.